Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always exciting to be back.
Yeah, today we're tackling Chapter 10 of Beyond Green.
Okay.
And this chapter is all about impact measurement.
Right.
Really making sure that all of our amazing eco-projects are actually making a quantifiable difference.
Yeah. Making sure that they're not just good vibes, but actually making a difference.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we go about measuring the impact of something as complex as a sustainability project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it can be kind of daunting to even think about measuring impact for a sustainability project because there are so many different factors at play.
Yeah.
But that's why in this chapter, they provide a few different frameworks, which can be really useful.
Okay, so no one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And I see here that they talk about logic models,
Yes.
theory of change,
Uh-huh.
and they even mention the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
So how do we even choose which one's right for our project?
Yeah. It depends on the project and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
So, for example, a logic model is really good for projects where you can draw a clear line between your activities
Okay.
and your outcomes. So let's say you're creating a community garden.
Okay. I love community gardens.
Yeah, me too. They're great.
Yeah.
So a logic model could help you map out how activities like hosting workshops or providing tools and seeds lead to outputs like fresh produce being grown.
Okay.
And then ultimately outcomes like improved community health or stronger social ties within the neighborhood.
So a logic model is great for, like you said,
Yes.
a very direct impact kind of project.
Right, where you can kind of see that
Yeah.
chain reaction happening.
Okay, but what about bigger, more systemic issues?
Yeah.
Like, let's say we're trying to tackle food waste across an entire city.
That's a great example. And in that case, you might want to use a theory of change framework
Okay.
because the theory of change is less about those immediate steps and more about the long game. It's about understanding all the different factors that contribute to a problem like food waste,
Okay.
and then mapping out all the different pathways to achieve your goal of reducing it.
Got it. So logic model for more direct impact,
Yeah.
theory of change for these bigger systemic issues.
Exactly.
Okay. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, tie into all of this. I mean, those are global,
Right.
right? How does the local project connect to something that big?
Yeah, I mean, the SDGs are global, but they're also a really useful framework for thinking about sustainability at any scale.
Okay.
So let's go back to that community garden example.
Okay.
If your garden also has an educational component, you could link that to SDG 4, which is quality education, or SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production.
Oh, interesting.
So it helps you connect your local project to these global goals.
Got it. So it's like a shared language for sustainability.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so we've got our framework figured out,
Yes.
but then we need some cold, hard data to actually track our progress.
Yes, you need to define some key performance indicators or KPIs.
Right. KPIs, what are those exactly and how do we choose the right ones?
KPIs are basically metrics that help you track your progress toward your goals.
Okay.
And it's really important to choose KPIs that are specific and measurable.
Oh, wait.
So for our community garden example, you could track the number of volunteers, the pounds of produce harvested,
Uh-huh.
or the number of educational workshops held.
Okay. All great metrics. But is there a danger of getting too caught up in numbers that don't tell the whole story?
Yeah, definitely. That's why it's important to choose KPIs that actually reflect your project's impact. So for instance, maybe instead of just tracking the pounds of produce harvested,
Okay.
you also track the percentage of that produce that's being donated to local food banks or used in a community meal.
Right. So it's not just about quantity, it's about the quality of the impact as well.
Exactly. You want to make sure your KPIs are telling the right story.
I like that the numbers tell a story, but we have to make sure it's the right story.
Yes, and to make sure you're getting the full story, you also need to involve your stakeholders in the process.
Right. Because sustainability projects don't exist in a vacuum.
Exactly.
So how do we actually go about getting meaningful input from our stakeholders?
Well, first, you need to identify who your stakeholders are.
Okay.
For the community garden, that might include community members, local businesses, school groups, anyone who's impacted by the garden or who has a stake in its success.
Makes sense.
And then you need to find ways to involve them throughout the process, whether it's through surveys, focus groups, community meetings, or just casual conversations.
So their input can be valuable at every stage.
Exactly.
From choosing the right KPIs to even refining the project itself.
Absolutely. Their insights can help you identify blind spots,
Yeah.
refine your approach, and ensure that your project is truly meeting the needs of the community.
It's like having a built-in feedback loop
Right.
that keeps you on track and helps you maximize your impact.
Exactly. And that actually leads us perfectly into the next section of the chapter, which is all about adapting and innovating your approach based on that feedback.
Okay, so it's not just about measuring impact. It's about using that data to continuously improve.
Exactly.
This has been a fantastic overview of impact measurement. I'm already feeling more equipped to make sure our eco projects are making a real difference.
Me too. And I think it's important to remember that impact measurement doesn't have to be a chore. It can actually be a really empowering and insightful process.
Yeah, and it can help us create even more impactful and sustainable projects.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to dive deeper into the next section where we'll explore how to adapt and innovate our projects based on the data we collect and the feedback we receive from our stakeholders.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned for that, and we'll be back in a flash. Okay, so we've got all this data, all this feedback coming in.
Right.
We've chosen the right framework. We're measuring our KPIs.
Yes.
But the book really stresses that this isn't a one-time thing. It's about using that information to adapt and evolve our projects over time.
Right. It's like tending a garden.
Okay.
You plant the seeds and you nurture them. You're constantly observing, making adjustments.
Right. Adding some compost here,
Ugh.
pruning a little bit there.
It's the same with our sustainability projects. We can't just set them on autopilot.
So we need to create these feedback loops that the book talks about.
Yes, exactly. And use them to make our projects even better.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, let's say you're running that community garden we talked about.
Right.
And you notice that your workshops on companion planting are always full,
Packed, yeah.
but the ones on composting are kind of sparsely attended.
Okay.
That's feedback right there.
It is, yeah.
Maybe people are really interested in learning about companion planting, but they're not so sure about composting.
So what do we do with that information?
Well, you could offer more hands-on composting demos
Okay.
or partner with a local composting expert to make those workshops more engaging.
So we're using the data to adjust our approach.
Exactly. You're listening to what your community is telling you.
And the chapter also mentions this thing called adaptive management.
Yes.
That kind of what we're talking about, but a little more official.
Yeah, you could say that adaptive management is basically a more structured approach to using feedback loops.
Okay, so it's like having a flexible roadmap.
Right. It's like you have a plan, but you're also open to changing course based on what you learn along the way.
Makes sense because things don't always go according to plan.
Exactly. You might encounter unexpected challenges like funding cuts or pests in your garden.
Oh yeah, those darn squash bugs got me last year.
I hear you on that.
Yeah.
And adaptive management helps you stay agile and find creative solutions to those problems.
So flexibility is key. We can't be afraid to change direction if needed.
Absolutely. And that ties into this whole idea of fostering a culture of innovation.
Okay, innovation. I hear that word everywhere these days.
It's become a bit of a buzzword, but it really is important for sustainability work.
So what does it actually mean in practice?
It means being open to new ideas, even those that seem a little out there.
Like what?
Well, let's say someone suggests installing a solar-powered aquaponics system in your community garden.
Okay, that's a little out there.
It might sound crazy at first,
Yeah.
but it could be a brilliant way to increase food production and reduce your environmental footprint.
Okay, so don't knock it till you try it.
Exactly. You never know where the next great innovation will come from.
And I imagine stakeholder input is crucial here too.
Oh, absolutely. They can help you identify problems that need solving
Right.
and even brainstorm potential solutions.
I love the idea of co-creating solutions with the community.
Me too.
Yep.
It's much more effective than just imposing ideas from the top down.
Makes sense. And speaking of innovation, this chapter highlights a really cool project that did this exceptionally well.
Oh, yeah. The Community-Based Climate Resilience Project.
That's the one they actually developed a mobile app.
Yes. And they partnered with local youth to do it.
Seriously. That's
Ah.
incredible.
Yeah.
What did the app do?
Well, it basically gamified ecosystem restoration activities.
Wait, so they made planting trees and cleaning up beaches into a game.
Exactly. It made those activities more fun and engaging, especially for the younger generation.
That's so smart.
And it wasn't just about having fun. The app also allowed the community to track their impact.
Like how many trees they planted.
Right. And it also showed them the bigger picture, like how those actions were contributing to local climate resilience.
So it wasn't just about taking action. It was about understanding the results of that action.
Exactly. And that's a powerful combination.
I'm starting to see how impact measurement can be so many more than just checking boxes.
Me too. It can be a way to empower communities, drive innovation, and really create lasting change.
Okay, I'm officially inspired. This is giving me all sorts of ideas for my own projects.
Me too. I think the key takeaway is that we need to be adaptable, innovative, and always listening to our stakeholders.
Absolutely. It's not about assuming we know what's best. It's about working together to create solutions that are both effective and meaningful for the community.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Before we wrap up, let's revisit that thought-provoking question from the chapter.
Okay.
What's one creative way you could measure the impact of your eco-project that goes beyond traditional metrics?
Ooh, that's a good one. It really gets you thinking.
Yeah, it really challenges us to get creative.
Yeah, and I think it's about thinking beyond those typical metrics.
Okay.
Like we always talk about carbon emissions,
Right, pounds of waste diverted.
biodiversity gains, all that stuff.
Exactly. But what about those impacts that are a little harder to quantify?
Okay, yeah.
What about the change in community narratives?
Okay.
So instead of just doing surveys, you could actually analyze how people talk about their community before and after a project.
Oh, that's interesting. So, like, are they talking about it with more pride,
Exactly.
more ownership, more
Right.
hope?
Are they telling more positive stories about their neighborhood?
Yeah, because that can be a really powerful indicator of impact.
I love that it's like capturing the ripple effect on the community's collective story.
Exactly. And another thing we could do is shift our focus from measuring outputs to measuring outcomes.
Okay, what's the difference?
So outputs are the things we produce,
Right.
like the number of trees planted or the amount of waste diverted.
Got it.
But outcomes are the actual changes in behavior or conditions.
So are people actually composting at home?
Exactly. Are they using less water, driving less, making more sustainable choices?
Because ultimately that's what we're trying to achieve, right?
Yes, those are the real signs of lasting change.
I love that idea. It's about moving beyond just raising awareness and actually measuring the shift in habits and mindsets.
Right, and you can gather that data through follow-up surveys or interviews.
Just asking people, hey, did this project inspire you to make any changes in your life?
Exactly, and you might be surprised by the answers you get.
I bet. It's those individual changes multiplied across a whole community that can really add up.
Absolutely, it's about creating a ripple effect of positive change.
Well, this whole conversation has been incredibly inspiring. It's a great reminder that impact measurement doesn't have to be a chore.
It doesn't.
It can actually be a really exciting and creative process.
And it can help us learn and grow and become even more effective change makers.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What are some creative ways you're measuring the impact of your eco projects?
Share your stories, your ideas, your challenges with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah, let's inspire each other to make an even bigger difference.
Exactly.
That's a wrap for today's deep dive into measuring impact and continuous improvement.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure having you. And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep making a difference. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.